right. Right. We are live. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, wherever you're dialing in from. Thank you for joining us for another surf session. Today is episode 11. My name is Anthony Green. I'm here in sunny California as almost always. I lead the sales team here at Surfside. I'm your host for today. For those that don't know Surfside, we are an advertising technology company and we help cannabis brands and retailers to advertise their business and their brands compliantly online. Today, I am stoked to welcome Bryant Ison, VP of Marketing at Planet 13. Welcome to Surf Sessions, Bryant.
Thanks. Great to be here.
If you folks have ever been to Las Vegas, and I'm sure almost everyone has at some point, you'd probably be familiar with Planet 13's flagship store there in Vegas. It is an incredible experience and dispensary, but it's also a bar, a museum, a consumption lounge, a coffee shop. I believe there's a tattoo parlor in there as well, if I'm not mistaken. It's really quite the experience. So if you haven't been to Planet 13 in Vegas, definitely get there next time. But most of us have probably popped in there and had a chance to experience that. And folks, my guest today specifically, and I speak from direct experience here, is a very talented and experienced marketer, very good man to boot as well. And with a wealth of experience, Bryant, both inside and outside the cannabis industry. So we're going to cover a lot of that territory today in the next half hour. So again, really stoked, Bryant, that you're joining us to impart some practical knowledge and takeaways for the group. Before we get into the details, Bryant, anything else you want to maybe share about your background or any color you want to add?
No, I mean, the only color I would add is that, having kind of spent a lot of time on the Fortune 50 side of things, as well as on the kind of the startup side of things, it's it's an interesting kind of mix of kind of like both worlds. And I think that, back a while, a lot of like my CPG kind of marketing colleagues kind of flooded into the industry. I think we've kind of seen, kind of a flux kind of in and out type of, like over the past little bit. And I think that's just a testament to how unique the industry is. It's, not, there are models that can be, applied and reapplied, and then some that just can't. And so I
Yes.
think even for Surfside, I think that, it's not a traditional kind of like media approach by any means, obviously. So there's always like, some really fun, unique kind of angles to this industry that, that appear.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, mate, and you certainly have that background. We're about to get into it. Quite a few folks I've had on this live stream have come from that traditional CPG world and have merged in and bringing those practices. So some of the stuff I want to ask you about today and will. Just for the attendees, folks, any questions you have, there is the ability to ask those questions, and we'll get to a few of them at the end, depending on how much time we have. So please feel free to ping any questions to Brian or me, and we'll get to them at the end. So with no further ado, let's get started. And Brian, the first thing I want to just quickly dig in on is that you started out in the Peace Corps. I think you're the first person I've had on the program to start there. Tell us just quickly about how that began and that was the start of your professional career.
Yeah, I mean, I think I lived in a small village in southern Mali, which is in West Africa. It was a great experience. I think that when I was coming out of like undergrad, I think one of the things I really wanted to do is before I kind of started a much more kind of like corporate career, I'm by, just by like DNA, I'm much more of an entrepreneur, like someone who loves building businesses. And so like it was really easy to kind of kind of get out of undergrad and then get into something that was, kind of more lucrative. But before I did that, I really wanted to kind of experience, giving back in that way. So, I was there for 3 years, and, honestly, like the biggest kind of takeaway is it just taught me a lot about like patience, resilience, and taking initiative. I mean, if you think about it, it's a bit of a weird situation, right? There's a guy that moves in next door to you from America and starts telling you what to do. So it's a really if you're kind of somebody who's living in the village that I kind of landed in, I think that it would be kind of a bit odd. But one of the things I learned quickly is that building relationships with people is really the first step you have to do before you can get into their lives, right? And so I think that's a big learning that has obviously kind of been a big red thread throughout my career.
Well, patience and resilience, mate, you use them every day, I'm sure, in this industry. Definitely good things to learn early on. Well, from there, you got into more of the traditional corporate world. So, CPG, as we touched on a moment ago, you worked at probably three of the largest CPG brand houses. Clorox, Johnson and Johnson, and PepsiCo. We've all heard of all of these companies and probably use many of their brands today. So, what do you miss about those days, from those first early days in the big corporate world, Bryant, cutting your teeth as a young marketer? What do you miss about that?
I mean, I miss in some ways, I didn't miss it at the time, but I miss it now. Was the discipline, the data-driven decision making. I really enjoyed that. And then lastly, like I think that like one of the biggest things was I missed the impact. Right. When I was at PepsiCo, I launched a soda innovation which had like fair trade sugar in it. And even though it was like a tiny launch for the company, like overnight, PepsiCo became the number one purchaser of fair trade sugar in the country. So that's like impact, right?
Yeah.
Like when like with a small move or really kind of any program that you would do had such a ripple effect across all parts of our society. I was the brand manager on Band-Aid. And so I would have moms come up to me all the time, like, complaining about kind of how the Band-Aids didn't stick or the characters they wanted to see on them. So that level of like impact in people's lives, I think is always like, it was kind of fun. And my mom knew what I did. You know what I mean? Now I don't think she knows exactly what I do or can fully process it, but it's a different world.
That's wild that the characters, there weren't the right characters on the band-aids. And yeah, yeah, it's funny. Mum just thinks you're doing something in weed now, and
I don't even know she was. I tell I work on like in healthcare work, which for she's over 80, so I think that's about all she probably needs to know at this point.
I love it, bless her. Well, mate, then around 2018 was your foray into this world of cannabis, your first foray into this at least with the cannabis, or was formerly known as Columbia Care. Past 9 months, 10 months or so, you've been at the helm of marketing there at Planet 13 with an amazing footprint of stores and brands. So, as I talked about in the intro, when most people probably think about Planet 13, right, they think about that Vegas flagship store for some obvious reasons, but you have other locations, right? You obviously have the OC location, you have Illinois, and of course now, you know, the biggest thing on your plate right now is 30 plus new locations, former VitaCan locations down in Florida, which is a whole other market. It's your first, med market, and it's completely different. So how are you going about at the moment, 9, 10 months in, with 4 different states? How are you going about balancing those needs right now?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. I think that's when it's evolving, as you can imagine. But I think that the most important bit is that the Vegas flagship store, it sees somewhere close to 2 million visitors every year. It's really the heart of the company and the heart of the equity. So like you can't take your eye off the ball on that experience because I mean, if folks have ever been, you mentioned this in the intro, you definitely come away a bit overwhelmed by the size and the kind of the impact of the experience. I mean, it's 160,000 square feet of the temple to cannabis, right? So it's um, like you mentioned before, there's a consumption lounge. There's a lot of other activity kind of happening besides just coming in and purchasing your favorite products. So making sure that Las Vegas kind of maintains that energy and excitement is key because that is like the wellspring from which everything else comes.
Mhm.
Florida, however, with its scale, has quickly become really important in its own right. And then really my role in that is like to support that team. So we have a full team kind of in Florida, which is doing a bang up job right now. We've transitioned all of those stores and we're just now getting into the groove of like operations. And what we're finding is that as the quality of the products are going up and as the assortment is going up, we're seeing a lot of like really great traction there.
Mhm.
My role kind of really is that although all the markets are different, you mentioned Orange County, very, very different than Illinois, which is very different than Vegas. My role is to make sure that like everything is coordinated, that everything is consistent, and that promise to the consumer is the same. Because I think that even we've seen in Florida, right, like folks that have been to Las Vegas and have been to Planet 13 suddenly realize that Planet 13 can be their home dispensary. It kind of blows people's minds. And I think it's a brand that people want to be a part of.
Mhm.
So that's like a great starting point. The next layer out though is you have to make sure you have the right products, the right pricing. You have to make sure that like, that you're involved in their daily lives in a way that like, is is something that people crave and that they want to have, as part of their daily routine.
Yeah. Well, the competition is, well, it's fierce in all those places.
Yeah,
Um, Florida's just a whole new beast, right? Like yeah, med market, but
yeah,
so many dispensaries, so many MSOs, so much competition. I was talking
yeah.
to someone even just this morning who, off the cuff, just said, it feels like every time some business goes out of business in Florida, a dispensary pops up in its place.
I think you see that, and I think that everyone is still kind of working through kind of the impact of Prop 3 in Florida, which was the legalized cannabis measure down in Florida. There was, it's one of those kind of interesting bits where you feel from the populace that there's this like really this large acceptance, but
Mm.
then when they've kind of tried to kind of do the legalization bit, kind of it hasn't kind of had met that hurdle. So I think that you have a lot of folks, a lot of MSOs or even single state operators that invested pretty heavily in Florida expansion. And when Prop 3 didn't go through, I think that there's just a kind of a realignment and readjusting right now. Um, I don't think that the legalization kind of conversation is done though for Florida, to be clear. I think that it's just been postponed. And I think that that's probably a statement that you can make for the total country, right? It's an evolving conversation. I think it just what it does is for folks that did get overextended in certain markets, it just creates a competitive dynamic which kind of focuses on price
Mhm.
and makes it really harder for kind of for brands to kind of grow and thrive there. And Florida's a vertically integrated market as well, so any sort of like brands are kind of vertically integrated into the operator.
Yes. I think I'm recalling this correctly with the vote, that they needed 75% or more for it to
60.
pass. 60, sorry. That's
Yeah.
right. Thank you. I knew I had that wrong. But and every big piece of legislation in Florida needs now 60% plus. But the irony is that to get that voted in, it was a 50-50 vote. So anyway,
It was
that's,
close. I mean, it would if it was kind of against the old kind of hurdle of 50-50 would have totally, I think it was like 57% was
yep.
was kind of what the vote was for legalization. And that came with a lot of kind of negative backing from not only the governor's office, but also like, other kind of interests. So in the face of that much kind of like, high level opposition, it still hit 57%.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And
and
you're
it's
right.
like, yeah, there's a lot of groundswell there.
No, it's not over yet. Although I feel like, we will read the different cannabis press every day. And I do feel like there's a slightly increased level of doom and gloom headlines lately, but we remain optimistic about that. Um, Switching gears a bit to something I wouldn't normally bring up with most folks, but because you're Planet 13 and you've done this well, let's talk a bit about the celebrity factor of things. Because I think when I got into this industry about 4.5 years ago, it was very much the topic du jour. It felt like every celebrity or many celebrities were doing something. I hear much less about it these days. Some have risen to the top. I think a lot have faded away. But obviously, the celebrity factor for you guys with that Vegas footprint flagship store, it goes hand in hand. So, how has celebrity association, you know, with cannabis or with you guys, it's had mixed success so far. So, how's your approach worked, and how have you managed to make the work you have done with celebrities in that world an effective weapon?
So first off, I totally agree with you that celebrity in cannabis has been hit and miss, right? I think that there are some really bright spots and there's some that, struggles. And I think that the one of the things I think that makes kind of Planet 13 kind of like work is that when you have a retailer that's committed to celebrity and you have a celebrity that's committed to the retailer, that partnership is by far kind of the first kind of like brick in an amazing foundation. Because if the retailer feels like, if Planet 13 feels the love from Wiz Khalifa or Mike Tyson, obviously it kind of that kind of promote that incents us to kind of put that brand front and center and to kind of promote it and to kind of drive it. And then I think that there's also kind of this bit around like a legit connection. So if I
Mm.
mean, no offense, Anthony, but if you kind of launched a cannabis brand, no matter how much we loved the Anthony brand of
G'day,
cannabis,
cannabis. Yeah.
yeah, you could if you really wanted to. No matter how much we as a retailer would be like really behind it, unless there's like, the other kind of component that like somebody has, can draw the eyeballs
Yeah.
and can kind of draw the traffic, that's the third leg of the stool that becomes, important. So for what's been really successful for us is like number one, we have great partners. Khalifa Kush and Wiz Khalifa have been like really like top notch, and folks that we really value. So we've got a lot, we've had like, Wiz Khalifa kind of do appearances, doing kind of like things in our lounge, which really drives a lot of excitement, also like kind of keeps up the momentum of the brand. Mike Tyson, great partner. We're actually having an appearance by Mike next Thursday. If you're here in Las Vegas for Champs, which is next week, on the 24th of July, he's going to be in the lounge doing an appearance, amongst other things. So you have like partners like that show up, that are kind of like very active and kind of helping to drive the brand. That's like the secret sauce is the right products, the right celebrity, the right retailer, and then obviously like that kind of promotional, stacking on top of everything, so that when Wiz drops a new strain, that we have an event on top of it, that we have a lot of things to talk about. PR has something to talk about. The local press and the national press has something to talk about. And that's like, I think where the chemistry really kind of like comes together. But yeah, I mean,
That helps bring
yeah,
that helps bring those 2 million people or 2 million worth of foot traffic in every year when you've got some, real tentpole folks like that, especially with Champs on, you've got so many
yeah,
people in town that are just going to be wanting to go and hang out down there. It'd be a big week for you next week.
yeah. And if you think about it too, like when you're like your mindset on vacation is just different than it is at home, right? Like when you're at home, you're like, I'm looking for my like tried and true, the thing that that if it's a gummy, that the thing that's predictable that I can expect, that sort of thing. When you're on vacation, like,
Especially,
especially in Las Vegas, right? I think like all rules are off.
yeah.
And so why wouldn't you want to smoke what Wiz Khalifa smokes or what
Mhm.
Mike Tyson smokes? Like that would be fun. That'd be fun to try, and it'd be fun to kind of like, do new things that you probably wouldn't do back home. And then when you go back home, you have an amazing story to tell about smoking in a lounge with Wiz Khalifa, like in Las Vegas. Like, what a story that is, man.
Well, if you can only track and measure the those impressions, Bryant, from that word of mouth, but that's good, word of mouth advertising in Vegas, right? If people have gone, smoked with him, bought the product, they're smoking it, they're talking to their friends, and then to your point, when they go back home, tough to measure. But I love that. You guys are just, you're so smart and fortunate to be able to do that, and to get those sorts of celebrities in such a dense area with people that are, to your point, in that mindset. It's Vegas. Let's go do the whole time is doing fun stuff and different stuff. So I'm jealous I'm not out there next week. I think we've got some people maybe going out, so I might send one or two of them along to check it out.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like it's we got a lot going on Thursday, the 24th.
Well, there's always some, well, not always, but there's so many tentpole events out there, aren't there? Like the Formula One Grand Prix, and there's so many things throughout the year you guys have.
Yeah.
But again,
We found
different
that
in
like
the other states.
EDC was a big one for us. I
Yeah.
think that's our crowd. 420 obviously is our crowd. So I think that we try to find, at least for the Las Vegas location, when the event schedule kind of lines up with cannabis friendly consumers,
Mhm.
that's like magic. Like when the Dead plays the Sphere, it's like Christmas here.
Yes. Well, I did giggle when I heard, because MJ is right after the Grand Prix now every year, and I giggled when I think it was my Uber driver maybe last year told me that the drivers were complaining about the smell of weed through Vegas. That made me giggle. I love that. A lot of it probably from Planet 13, I would guess as well.
Hopefully, right?
So, mate, you're across wholesale and retail, which is a lot. I mean, one or the other would be a lot. So you're leading wholesale marketing, you're leading retail marketing. Can you share some of the focus on the retail side? Obviously, starting to get into now more of the specific digital marketing world here. So just want to get a sense on the retail side, also considering this unique footprint of stores in these four states. what works, any failures you maybe want to call out that you're happy to yell out, key
Yeah.
channels, key partners, that kind of stuff.
So, I mean, I think a lot of the work we do with Surfside is, we find that like geo-targeting both locals and tourists in Las Vegas is, I think, really effective. I mean, the return on advertised spend is pretty strong. And I think that the key is different messaging for different kind of targets, but the response is consistently good. So, and we've also started testing out Surfside Commerce, which is that co-marketing platform. I'm sure we'll talk about it in a minute, that brands can use to drive awareness and traffic to the store. So that's like, when I was on the brand side of things, like that would be such an insane tool for a brand to use and invest in because it has such a tight connection to sales. In terms of some of the failures to call out, I think that, look, man, every single market is different. So even though we've had like really strong success in digital advertising for Las Vegas, I think we've struggled with it in geographies like, Orange County. And a lot of it is, it's just a different dynamic. We've tried kind of switching up creative, we tried different things, but it's also like in Santa Ana where our location is, you just have a level of competition which is like pretty intense. And so
Yes.
like I mean, it just goes to show you that like you can't run the same playbook everywhere. Duh. I mean, I think that's an obvious thing for most marketers. I think that the biggest thing is figuring out like what is the right playbook for each and what parts do you kind of like keep and reapply and which ones do you kind of just essentially kind of rewrite the playbook on. And I think Florida is one where we're kind of rewriting the playbook a bit because like to your point, like scale is high. So we have 32 stores and and counting, right? And but then you also have a lot of other competitors who are very aggressive and kind of run the gamut from value to kind of like much more kind of like equity driving and kind of lifestyle driven.
Yeah, it's well, if you went back to your Pepsi days, let's say, or your Clorox days, I know it's on the wholesale side, but you would be able to treat, I assume, uh, a consumer in New York and a consumer in California kind of more the same than you can treat your consumers today, I would think, right? You've got to be more customized today.
Yeah, I think overall, I think that's the message for all businesses, right? I think that at a certain point, though, the cost and to kind of get down to kind of the level of targeting that we on the cannabis side need, you kind of don't really need it when you're at a PepsiCo or Johnson& Johnson because essentially, like, you know, in order for us to have, if you take PepsiCo for example, in order for you to have like state by state customization of your programs, you just don't have the staff to manage it. Like a lot of those large brands are kind of run by 1 to 2 people, right? Like that's, and plus a bunch of agencies, but that level of, like segmentation, you might get kind of like broad kind of geographic segmentation, Midwest versus the West versus the Northeast, and try to do as much as possible to kind of group those.
Yep.
But in a way, the I'm not sure that the personalization juice is worth the squeeze
Hmm.
for those bigger brands. You could definitely do it. You could definitely get to much more personalization for like Mountain Dew or 7 Up or Pepsi or whatnot. But I'm not sure it would kind of, that the incremental revenue that you would get would justify the spend that it would take to get that.
Well, it's funny because, in my opinion, sugar water is sugar water, but cannabis is so much. Cannabis is more like wine. I mean, you can get there's so much variety, there's so much quality, and some lack of quality too. Um,
And well, and the consumer is different. I mean, honestly, like to your point, like not only do you have like terroir and kind of different cultivators and that sort of thing, but you just have a very different customer makeup in Florida
mhm,
because it's a medical state. There's 1 million people in the program out of a state of like almost 30 million in population.
mhm.
Those 1 million people have a very different kind of like consumption profile than say California, which
Yes.
is very different. So not only are you trying to make adjustments for terroir, but you're also making adjustments for it's just a different consumer walking through the door every day in Florida versus California.
Yep, I love that, mate. On the wholesale side, um, so 30 plus retail locations. Sounds like 40 plus almost now across 4 states. So you've got your house of brands right now, and I think about 100 retailers in Cali and Nevada. So Trendy is one of those brands a lot of folks would know. Haha is a brand that is definitely very prevalent here in Cali. I see it all the time. So on the wholesale side, selling through the independent retail chains in these states, or third party retail chains, should I say? What's the strategy there? Like, do you have plans to expand beyond the retailers you're in the states you're in? What's the next sort of 12 months look like on the wholesale side?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest question, I think, for a lot of MSOs is why wholesale, right? Beyond the obvious, like additional revenue. I think that one of the things that we kind of found is that we have something to really unique to kind of bring to the market. So we have some pretty spectacular product coming out of cultivation, thanks to our chief cultivator, Chris Wren. Those of you who are kind of in the know that he's one of the OGs in the industry, and actually like has been innovating in that space for a while. So it makes sense to sell that product in not only our owned retail, like here at the superstore, but also like to the entire market. So in Nevada, we have 2 physical retail locations, but with the wholesale operation, you have like just many more points of distribution to get out and really kind of drive that. So that makes sense both from a business standpoint, but then also, like I think, like I mentioned before, we have a unique approach to the market from a product standpoint. Um, in terms of expansion, it's interesting. I think that this is I would be I would love to kind of have a long conversation about this with a lot of different people, but we're always looking for ways to expand and grow our own brands. So the challenge that, and I'm sure many of the people listening can kind of like relate to this, is that geographic expansion is very tricky. You need to find a good, reliable partner kind of in a state that can produce and distribute the product to the level of your satisfaction. And, that is not an easy get because, it's cannabis, number one. And so you just have, depending on the state and the regulations and physically the people who are in those states, do you have the right partners to kind of to shoulder that cultivation and manufacturing and distribution? But really it's about the basics. I think that like, when you have great products and strong distribution and strong brand awareness, you know, people will kind of, come to your brand. I think that we've seen other brands that have been really successful at kind of building out a geographic footprint. And so I think that, we see the potential to that, but it's just about getting those basics right, like as you're expanding.
Yep. And what about uh, any specifics about how you then, once you're in these stores, let's say you've got the right cultivator, the right retailer, the right disto, all those things, how much influence are you able to exert over, acquiring new customers and building long-term customer relationships through that intermediary?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I mean, in cannabis, that's a very different answer than it would be for like, Band-Aid, for example. Obviously, like the retailer and the dispensaries that we work with are very much like our 50-50 partners in kind of building that because, I think that one of the models that has not been, applicable from the CPG model is let's get distribution and then just kind of run a bunch of ads, kind of at the awareness level, kind of drive awareness of the brand so that when people eventually go into the retailer, they'll find the product they need. And I think what we're seeing is that retailers have a lot more power in cannabis than they do you know in the CPG world. I'm not sure that's fair, actually. With Walmart and Target, I think they have a fair
Well,
amount of power, right? But I think that the bud tender and the retailer really are really kind of a key to success for any brand. And so like so when you're kind of like building this out as a brand, like you just have to kind of make sure that the retailer partnership is very, very solid. You're constantly nurturing it. You're constantly kind of like working with them. And for us, it's kind of, it's a bit of shoe on the other foot thing, right? So when we kind of work with brands that are coming into our store, we ask them for a lot because we rely on them to drive people into the store from, if people are just looking for that brand, and then also for conversion, like when they're kind of like in the store itself, they're like, oh, you happen to have fill in the blank product that I like that's what I'm going to get. Um, Now that, we're wholesaling to other dispensaries, like now we have to kind of like, kind of take that same playbook and essentially kind of partner with the retailers to really drive awareness and conversion kind of in store.
Yeah, it's a unique role where you've got a foot in each of those camps. And yeah, it's almost that mirror image to some degree. Mate, to that end, and we'll wrap up here because we're at time. And folks, if you've got questions, again, please shoot them through on the little chat function here. But to that end, Brian, you're talking about, again, switching back to your retail lens here and all the brands that you sell in your stores and making sure that those relationships are strong and both sides are pulling their weight. That merges me here into retail media, commerce media, obviously, right? Which is transforming how brands, not just in cannabis, obviously, commerce media, retail media, as pioneered by Amazon, and a lot of those big box stores have their own networks now. Cannabis has that opportunity now, and you folks are part of this with us in Nevada to start. I know the other locations are coming online. So when you think about tactical ways to help the brands you're selling be successful with Planet 13, like how do you approach these channels? Like what opportunities do you think exist for the brands to get involved or be featured within your strategy? I think of Wild as an example here because obviously I know the answer, and you guys have been working with them, to create creative experiences that are co-branded potentially and also measurable.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think that your point is dead on, which is, retail media networks are huge right now in the broader kind of consumer marketplace. Cannabis is no exception, and it's growing, especially in cannabis. I think it's growing. I think that, we partner with Surfside on the Surfside commerce platform, which allows brands to not only run kind of ads outside of the dispensary to drive into the dispensary, which is what we as a retailer like really value. Like there's, when I worked on, in the CPG world, I think that one of the conversations that I would always have with, you know, Walmart and Target is their question would be like, how are you driving people into my store? Whether it's via innovation or marketing, advertising, you need like the role of the brands are to drive traffic into the retailer. So that's what we like. And then we can kind of, once they're in, then we can kind of help convert, right? And that's where I think commerce media is super helpful, is that, you as a brand have a lever that's not directly tied to me as a retailer, but as a partner, it partners with the retailer. So um, it allows brands to kind of like drive traffic to our menu, kind of branded traffic to our menu, so that then when folks convert, they convert on your brand. We also love it because we just love the traffic.
Mhm.
Like everybody's money is green, and so we love the traffic it builds. I think that I think to your point, where we've been testing it with here in Nevada with Wild. We'd love to expand it. I think not enough of our branded partners really take advantage of this, and so I think we should. That's a big opportunity for us. When I worked at like a place like J&J, like I would have killed to have a product like this, frankly, because it's connected to the sale. There are very few things that are so directly connected to, like, I run this ad and I can trace it to an actual purchase off the menu. And that kind of like direct ROI is unusual for marketing, but also even more so in cannabis. So we're huge fans of it.
Well, I love that and want to spread that message. And any brands, on that basis, Brian, I love that want to do more with you guys in particular. We'll make sure that we really take care of them and make sure it's a really, really flying start. So I appreciate that. We're a bit over time. We've kept most people on, which is great. Almost everyone stayed on. I'll just time for one question and we'll wrap up here. So, question from Marcus, and this is a question for you, Brian. How would you approach your marketing strategy if you didn't have a celebrity element to it? Well, I don't think you use it for everything, but I'll let you answer. And how do you strategize for markets in Florida that aren't Las Vegas?
Yeah, I think that like I mean, the formula is not different, right? So it's like the only piece that comes out is the celebrity. So the celebrity kind of brings that ancillary awareness driver, so they can kind of post on their socials and that sort of thing. It kind of, but I think that if you have really great products and product news, I think that that's the start. I think that's really, really important. And, using those kind of new product drops or uh, as kind of mini events. So think like, Amazon Prime Day is kind of something that's now kind of been baked into our, society.
It
But
goes for
if
a week, doesn't it?
yeah, I mean, if you remember, it didn't even exist a while back. And so they've been able to create a moment in time when you're thinking about Amazon Prime and that you're anxious to kind of purchase. Yeah, it's the deals, but it's that sense of being kind of like left out. Like, oh my gosh, like if I don't get it, is it going to be available later on? Cannabis brands can do that too, right? Like you can create a bunch of FOMO by doing exclusive product drops and then promoting it, leading up to that, promoting the moment, and then also kind of promoting kind of what happened. So that when you do it again, that people are kind of, realize like, oh shoot, like I should probably hop on this because it may not be around forever. So I think that that's how, without the celebrity bit, I think that, we do that. And by the way, not everything we do is celebrity. So that's a pretty standard thing that we do at Planet. In terms of like places like Florida, I think that the biggest kind of difference is like you just can't take your eye off the ball competitively.
Mm.
And I don't mean that we can anywhere else, but Florida happens to be a very, very active market. Not unlike other places like Michigan or other places where it's really dynamic. And so like whereas like a lot of in other markets that may not be as competitive, as a marketing team, you can kind of create a program, kind of see how it works, and then kind of tinker with it on the edges. The minute that you kind of like issue a program or a deal, like in Florida, like guess what? Like all of your competitors are focused on it, and they've already like innovated against it.
Mhm.
So like it's just a very kind of faster moving market that just needs a tremendous amount of attention on a daily basis.
Well, I was going to say just the time management in your job, your team as well, and the whole team there, Lee and Larry and the whole team, we take our hats off because it's I think everyone's got a unique footprint in this industry, but yours certainly really is. And just so thankful and stoked that you were able to join us today, share so much background. I always love hearing, and the feedback we hear from attendees as well is really hearing like the pre-cannabis experience and how that has transposed into the existing environment with all the challenges. So thank you again for imparting all that knowledge and wisdom. Very much appreciate you, and look forward to catching up with you again soon. Thank you to everyone who dialed in live, anyone that's listening to this later on. Hope you enjoyed the content. If folks want to get in touch, Bryant, LinkedIn, I would assume would be the best place to reach out to you.
Yeah, that'd be the best place. I would give you my email, but I think I would be flooded with emails by the end of the day. So yeah, reach out via LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn.
Awesome. LinkedIn's always a good spot. Well, everybody, please join us for the next surf session, which is August 6th. We actually have True Leave joining, which will be interesting. Speaking of Florida. Until then, Bryant, thank you. Thanks for all the attendees, and it's bye for now.